Welcome to the E30, this very first M3, and of course, I mean, it's really an awesome experience. The steering here is very wake, so that's a huge difference to nowadays vehicle. This there's so much play, hardly any resistance, but I just love this purest manual feeling, thin steering wheel, and the gearbox. I mean, it is also somewhat wake in some areas, but I think it's super cool just to have this unfiltered experience. You know, how is it as a co-driver?
Well, first of all, I love the space in here. It seems really compact on the outside, but because of the thin doors and the really minimal dashboard and lack of airbags or any of that kind of sound deadening kind of stuff.
I found it really peculiar that we have the first gear like in the back left, you know, and then
this is called a dogleg gearbox, and that's because, you know, you have 2 and 3 right in one line, and it's kind of designed to be like a track car because you're usually between second and third gear on a racetrack, so it's really easy to just go up and down and change between second and third, and you never use first gear in a racetrack. It's just to get the car rolling. So, but you got to remember, you don't accidentally put it in reverse and smash into the car behind you at a traffic light.
Yeah, I mean, that's really cool. I mean, like, I like to switch from second to third, and also like just in the city and so on. That's really cool. Mm-hmm. And for me, like, really funny is, at that point, this car was super sporty, and it went so fast and so quick at the same time in the acceleration. But nowadays, this rather feels like a comfortable vehicle, and any Golf GTI or something would be so much sportier, you know, of course, in a nowadays sense, and this car is still very capable.
But tell me more about this engine. How does it respond? It's a 4-cylinder manual throttle cable. How does that feel?
Yeah, I really love this purest linear feeling. Mm-hmm. The clutch has a lot of resistance. So, I mean, recently had some of the new vehicles like the Hyundai Tucson, where I had like the least responsive clutch ever, and now this is like a super responsive clutch, you know. So you have a good feeling of when you lift your foot off the clutch, and it, you know, it comes really towards you, and you immediately feel one with the vehicle, you know. And that's also the reason why you would still go manual. You know, you have the feeling in your foot. You have, you know, here on your right hand, so everything is totally in your control, and you can really finely tune and play with throttle and the clutch, and that's also where this car comes alive. You know, when you cruise it a little bit, it's maybe like, oh, you know, we're on the Sunday cruise, but then, you know, when you're going up in the revs, that's where this car is really fun, you know. And yeah, no, it wasn't.
No, you got a good. I saw that.
With the second one, yeah.
Takes a little bit of getting used to, but I think that's the point. You live with this for a couple days, and you get the hang of that gearbox.
Yeah.
But let's put your foot on it. Come on.
Yeah. Okay. Now we can accelerate
go a little bit faster.
More. Let's put back to second gear and let's go. Woo!
The engine sounds pretty nice.
Wow, yeah. I mean, that's really cool. I mean, when you really rev it out. Totally adrenaline rush, even though it's not super powerful in comparison to nowadays cars, but you know, of course there's not the same sound dampening and so on, but I have to say, I mean, now we're driving 70 kilometers an hour, there's not too much wind noises, so I think it's also, they improved the aerodynamics here for the E30M version in comparison to the normal 3 Series, but I think acoustic wise it's actually quite fine, so very interesting. For me, this is so enjoyable, and it brings so many memories. Back then, I was, you know, on the back seat in the E30 and watching my grandparents drive, and being able to drive this one now myself is really a dream come true for me. And man, I think I really have to get one of these.
I stepped on the brake a little bit with my left foot. Oh, I feel like I'm in the 80s and I'm driving a race car. Visibility is fantastic, and you look out the back, you see that big orange wing.
That's awesome. Yeah.
It's awesome, right? It's totally awesome. Yeah, the gearbox, and this is one thing I always notice with BMW gearboxes, is I don't get that very nice solid clunk. You know, like some of these Japanese gearboxes. You know, when I drove the 2002 or the 2002 Tii, or when I drove the Z3. So kind of all the eras, the 70s, this the 80s, and that the 90s. This seems to be a prevailing characteristic of BMW gearboxes. It's not a very gated feel. but it's still really fun to drive. But I think overall, like you said, it's not a fast car. It's sporty. It's not about speed, it's just about the sensation of speed. You know, the analog controls, the sound of the engine, the vibrations, the smells. It's just about the sensations.
Yeah, I think this one here, it feels faster than it actually is, and the new one is faster than it actually feels. That's a weird thing. And yeah, I just want to say, oh man, AJ, this might be a very expensive day for me. I'm not sure if I can get out of this vehicle without just like, you know, asking the guys at BMW Classic, like, do you have one for me or something?
Did you bring your checkbook?
Yeah. Oh God, I shouldn't have done this review.
All right, now in the new M3, first of all, there's light years of difference between the old one and the new one. The engine, the steering, the chassis, it's so much more agile. It's so much more faster. I mean, 510 horsepower compared to, what was it, 195? There's no comparison. It's more than twice the amount. I think that, you know, the seats are a little bit more... There's a bigger difference between the 3 Series and the M3 here than perhaps the original 3 Series and the original, or the original M3 and the 3 Series then, because the seats were still similar. You know, it didn't really feel all so different. Here we have this gorgeous M wheel with the M buttons, these sport seats, so this is more purposeful. And also, like, I feel like I'm sitting lower in the car. The visibility is not so great. To be honest, I prefer the visibility of the old car.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, when we were talking earlier in the beginning of the episode, what should have stayed the same and what do we like that has changed? I think one thing that should have stayed the same is the visibility. You know, this has grown bulkier, you have a really high bonnet line, and then you have a shorter windshield. So I understand it's more cocooned, the A-pillars have to be bigger for crash regulations, but somehow I'm not really feeling connected with the outdoor as much. And I remember driving on the racetrack as well. I didn't like these mirrors too much because they were too big and obstructive, you know? But what I do like that has changed now is the steering, the engine. I think it's just so much more performance.
It's his favorite engine, like I think of all time, right?
It's one of my favorite engines. Not of all time maybe, but definitely my favorite engine that you can get today. I mean, just it's instant. Like, we didn't have this kind of a reaction in the old one, did we?
Yeah. And this here, of course, on paper, just so much sportier. You immediately feel it. This car tells you, like, you know, AJ, like, hit the throttle, like, now, do it now. And also check the speed cameras. But the original M3 was super sporty at that time. But it doesn't say, like, you know, immediately, like, hit it. It can also be like Sunday cruise as well, you know?
I think you're absolutely right. And again, this gearbox, I do not like this gearbox. And I said this when we tested the car at the launch event as well, that I think you should stick to the standard M3, get the manual transmission. You don't need that extra 30 horsepower, and it's so much more pure. And again, similar to that E30, but yeah, overall,
I like the auto gearbox, by the way. I like it. Sorry.
You do?
Yeah,
do you?
I do.
I mean, on the highway and stuff.
I'm too lazy.
You're too lazy. Well, the paddle shifters are pretty nice. They're really tall. I like the haptic feedback and the tactile feel of them. But on the racetrack, it's a bit sluggish, I think. Yeah, but my heart somehow still feels happy that this car has this extra performance, and I think I prefer this performance, and I will take this performance over the older one.
Yeah, I mean, stuff like this, you know, you need like a little acceleration boost, just slide in the throttle and it's directly there, you know. That's really the thing about the new M3, totally, man. My turn.
You know, this has a really great limited slip differential. You don't need four-wheel drive. There's so much traction coming out of a corner like that, even when you launch it into a corner.
You should definitely get the rear-wheel drive version of this one. So, yeah, from the exterior, I really have to say, I would get the vintage one with that angular design. I just love that angular design. Interior-wise, yeah, I like the puristic approach of the vintage one. Here, of course, you have the modern infotainment system, as you said. You know,
Right.
you can do so much more things with that. And what I really like about the new interior, the refinement, like the build quality of the interior is top notch here with the new generation. That's what I prefer here. Maybe a little bit less controls. So taking something from this purist, like that, so, like from the gesture
control,
control there, you know. So a little bit less controls here, and then it would be perfect to me. Yeah, and then driving wise, I mean, this is the sports machine. It's so much fun, and like, I mean, look at that slalom characteristic. I'm immediately there. That's awesome. Steering feel, I think they have worked on that now a little bit at least. Let me just see how easy I can ease it around here. That's of course also a lot of fun with the rear-wheel drive. Awesome. Like the rear came around just a little bit.
Yeah. It's that ESP and the M traction control. Just you have so much to play with. This also has that drift analyzer, and it really is like I was playing with this on a drift pad at the other event, and it's so intelligent. It makes anybody feel like they're freaking Ken Block because it does all the hard throttle manipulation for you.
Yeah.
And you know, coming back to what should have stayed the same and what we're glad has changed. One thing is, of course, I like the new interior. For me, I think this is more. I'm a millennial. I need my touch screens, but at the same time, unlike a lot of other cars and other manufacturers, there's still buttons. There's buttons for the volume. There's buttons for the climate control. Thank you, BMW. It's so much easier to manipulate and operate these systems.
Yeah, it's good that we still have them. Yeah, I think steering-wise, obviously the new generation has a better steering feel than the vague one of the vintage one, but that's with all vintage cars. But still, with the 3 Series, I think they have other cars at BMWs that have a better steering feeling, and I still wonder up to this day, why have they not the best?
You love doing that, don't you, Thomas?
Before driving this one, I was so sure to pick the vintage one, but now they're really making it tough on us here today.
So Thomas, what would you? So if you could take the keys of either one home today, what would you drive home? What would you pick? You had to pick only one.
Yeah. I mean, this is such an amazing experience, and the performance is so extraordinary. I mean, clearly, the engineering job that went into this vehicle is really amazing. But I think the old one got me so hooked this time. And the design, this angular design, I think I can't withstand. I think I have to take the vintage one. And you?
Well, that's good for me because you can take that. I'm going to take this. I know the old one has character. It's a classic. It's a cult. It has its own cult following. But I think this just the performance you expect is there, and then there's so much more. Unfortunately, the performance, I know it was great for 1987, but in today's world, it's just not there. It's a cool car, but I would take this.
Okay, so we're gonna talk to BMW and see if we can take both home then. Yeah, that's a deal. And of course, I want you guys to state in the comments which one would you take home, and also tune in to the Porsche Boxster episode where we did actually the same with the Porsche Boxster, taking the old model and the new model and compare it. It was also a blast. So see you there, and of course see you in the comment section.